They say you should never meet your heroes, but I'm prepared to make an exception when those heroes are cars. I'm here at the Grand Prix collection at the world famous Donington Park racing circuit. This is the largest collection of Formula 1 and Grand Prix racing cars in the entire world. And among the drivers of these cars are the greatest drivers the world has ever seen. I need hardly tell you that these are the exact cars I watched racing on TV when I was a kid. These are the cars that there were posters on my bedroom wall. And these are exactly the same cars that my brother and I used to race on our Scale Extric set. Trouble is, I have a terrible confession to make. I'm actually not here to look at the Formula 1 cars. I fell in with a bad crowd at university and got into rallying. So I'm on a pilgrimage to Hall 5, which is now home to the Prodrive collection. To people of my age, the name of Prodrive is synonymous with one car, the Subaru Impreza, and they have two absolute classics in here. This is the Group A car that Colin McRae took to victory in the 1996 Rally Catalunya, and here, proudly sporting its bull bars, snorkel and raised suspension, is the car that Richard Burns won the Safari Rally in 4 years later. For me, what makes my visit here today all the more poignant is that both of these drivers were world champions, and yet neither is alive today, and both died in tragic circumstances. They'll never grace a World Rally Championship stage again, and for the time being at least, neither will Subaru. The company withdrew for the competition back in 2008 after winning both the drivers and the constructors title 3 times. Mind you, all is not lost, as Subaru never stopped building the road cars that form the basis for those rally winners, and the spiritual successor to Colin and Richard's cars has just gone on sale in the UK. Right from the word go, it's obvious that this new WRX STI can trace its bloodline right back to those classics in the museum. I mean, just look at that huge scoop in the bonnet, these squared off wheel arches with the air vents behind them, and that massive rear wing. This car could have just driven straight off a rally stage. Naturally, I'm hugely excited to be testing this thing, but I can't deny there are some alarm bells ringing in the back of my mind. You see, the cars in there are 15 to 20 years old, but the basic recipe of this new car doesn't look that much different to theirs. My worry is this: where's the progress? You see, the car market has moved on hugely since the heyday of the Impreza. So does a car like this actually have a place in the modern world, or is it just a museum piece on wheels? To find out, I'm going to go for a good old-fashioned blast on some of Britain's best driving roads. There's no better test for a car like the WRX than the Great British B Road, and you won't find many better examples of those than the ones here in the Peak District. The road rises and falls and twists and turns, completely at the mercy of this wonderful landscape. It's enough to put any car and its driver right through its paces. And the good news is the WRX feels completely at home on these roads. Mind you, that should come as no great surprise, because just a few months ago British rally champion Mark Higgins set a new lap record around the Isle of Man TT course in a car virtually identical to this one. I realise I'm not going to get anywhere close to his 160 mph average speed, but it didn't take me long to realise this is one very, very quick car across country. The stiff suspension keeps body roll to an absolute minimum, and that means you can maintain immense speed through bends. And then thanks to the four-wheel drive system, as soon as the road straightens out again, you can put all that power down immediately. Best of all, this thing's very forgiving too. And I confess I'm given to the occasional bout of ham-fisted over-exuberance, but I'm here to tell the tale, and that tells you everything you need to know. There's no denying it's hard work to drive this car really quickly. After all, the engine doesn't wake up until at least 3,000 revs, and that means you need to make lots of gear changes through what isn't the best gearbox in the world. But for me, that's all part of the appeal. Maybe I'm a bit old school about stuff like this, but I think that makes the drive all the more involving and all the more dramatic. The steering is wonderfully quick too, and although it may strike some people as a little light, you soon get used to it and you can place the car with complete accuracy on the road and clip those apexes absolutely perfectly. There's loads of grip too, and for all that, perhaps the thing I'm most grateful for is the fact that the brakes are well up to the job of stopping this thing. Best of all, I get to seriously indulge all my rally driving fantasies thanks to the adjustments I can make to the way the car behaves from the comfort of this rather lovely driver's seat. In my heart of hearts, I know it's really just a bit of a gimmick, but with this control I can adjust the differential. That means I can give the car better traction or more stability in slippery conditions, or even sharpen the handling even further when conditions allow that. Then with this control, I can adjust the sensitivity of the throttle, making the engine respond even more quickly when I press that pedal to the metal. I'm not going to lie and tell you the car is faultless, it certainly isn't that, but up here in the peaks, it's really in its element. I know we soon need to head back to the real world, but just for the moment, I'm going to pretend that its traffic jams and its potholes don't exist, wipe any worries from my mind about the fuel economy this thing's doing, and just enjoy what the WRX does best. I'm going to go for another blast across these glorious roads. Sadly, all good things must come to an end, and we've had to leave behind the glorious roads of the Peak District. Instead, we're in much more everyday driving conditions now, and sadder still, this is exactly where the WRX starts to reveal its shortcomings. For a start, the lack of strength at low revs of the engine is really frustrating in traffic. You don't have to travel all that far on the motor to realise that this is a really noisy car. But worst of all is the ride. As you can tell from the amount that camera is shaking about while we try and film this, it's really firm. And there are times the ride is genuinely uncomfortable. To make matters worse, the ergonomics are pretty dreadful too. Take the trip computer for example. It may look nice and smart on top of the dashboard there, but it's controlled by this horrible little button hidden away underneath the hazard warning light switch. It looks and feels cheap, low quality and dated. And there's far too much of this cabin you can say that of. Anyway, that's enough of my complaints for the moment, as we're just about to reach our next destination, Prodrive, the company behind all of Subaru's rallying success, and the company that built those two fabulous cars we saw at the start of our journey. Here to follow the tragic story of Richard Burns, who won the World Rally Championship in 2001 at the wheel of a Subaru Impreza, only for a brain tumour to strike him down a mere 4 years later at the age of just 34. However, his name lives on through the Richard Burns Foundation, a charity that was set up to commemorate him by some of his closest friends and colleagues. Among those is Prodrive's technical director David Lapworth, who worked very closely with Richard and who's been a trustee of the foundation right from day one.
Richard was professional, he was very determined, he kept things simple, didn't like to make things complicated, so in many ways one of the easiest to work with, although still demanding. I think most people would say that Richard's strength was the fact that he thought a lot about what he was doing. There's no doubt when it came to the illness he went about it in the same way. If you go back to the very early days, when we set the foundation up, there were two things going on in our minds. One was that we should try and remember Richard, and Richard's experience and some of his comments from his illness was that you know, what must it be like for ordinary people? You know, we've been working with Brain and Spine Foundation for quite a long time. Peter Hamlin, the guy that more than anybody looked after Richard through his illness, is very much involved in the Brain and Spine Foundation. But we focus now on working with them because it's so obviously a fit with Richard. We're trying to work on some projects now to get more help to people who suffer the same sort of thing.
It's entirely appropriate that we should have visited Prodrive, and not just because of the Richard Burns connection. You see, what's happening at Prodrive is symbolic of the world that this WRX inhabits. Prodrive is moving on, leaving the premises it's been in for the best part of 30 years, and moving to a new site just up the road that will better accommodate its growing business interests. In just the same way, the car market has moved on, and people who are buying fast cars nowadays have much higher expectations than they did in the Impreza's heyday. At the beginning of our journey, we wondered if a car like this still had a place in the modern motoring world. The answer is yes, but for an increasingly small number of absolutely dedicated driving enthusiasts. The car certainly has an old school appeal, but it's a one-trick pony. For the same amount of money as this car costs, you could buy something that's easier to live with, cheaper to run, more comfortable and more sophisticated. We're not quite ready to consign the WRX to the pages of automotive history yet, but the day we do is coming ever closer.